Hello, and thank you for tuning in again to Autistic Radio, sponsored by coldpack.co.uk. If you're a clinic requiring cold packs that advertise your practice at the same time as producing the best cryotherapy solution, then coldpack.co.uk supports us here with every purchase you make through their website. Harry, we're moving over to the new format. We're starting with a poem, is that correct?
Yes, it is. Hello, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 22nd of February 2026. And this is where we share the posts from the autisticradio.com's Facebook page. And we'll have a new format. And the new format is now start with a poem that's been shared on our page. And the first poem, and the poem that's read tonight is the following. It's by G.R. Robertson. It says, while walking through the town, I got caught in a shower. So I ducked into the mall to pass away an hour. In the pet shop window, it said closing down sale. Went in for a Jack Russell, came out with a whale. How to get him home? My head began to spin. At the bus stop, a parking warden stuck a ticket on his fin. So I quickly paid the fine because I didn't want a fuss, before buying all the seats to get the whale home on the bus. He filled up the back garden into the back lane. The neighbours couldn't get past and they began to complain. They didn't believe my pet cost a couple of £100, and the whale just rolled his eyes and ate a ton of squid. He didn't like a squeaky toy. He didn't like a ball. I wondered if he'd really like anything at all. The vet just smiled when he gave me an enormous bill, and the whale just rolled his eyes and ate a ton of krill. Got a lead of anchor chain welded to a forklift, but taking the whale for a walk, I couldn't make him shift. Pulled all my muscles, cleaning him, ended up with a limp, and the whale just rolled his eyes and ate a ton of shrimp. He didn't bark at the postman or chase away the cat. He didn't lay eggs or give milk. He just lay there and got fat. When I bought him, this wasn't I'd banked on, and the whale just rolled his eyes and ate a ton of plankton. I shouted, can't you do anything? The whale just looked at the floor. I couldn't take him back to the shop, so I took him to the shore. I pushed and shoved him for hours till he was back in the sea. Then the whale turned back and he looked straight back at me. He kind of looked like he might be in a better mood, but I worried that he looked at me the way he looked at food. Then water spurted from his head, and I knew I hadn't done wrong. The whale splashed his tail, swam around, and then began his song. He sang of coral reefs, sunken wrecks, and schools of fishes, octopus's gardens, the rainbow's end, and of a mermaid's wishes. The wind, the waves, the rising tides, the seagull's lonely call, the lives and loves of the sea, and the wonder of it all. I wept a tear and waved as he swam out to sea. And that's the story of a whale and a human being, me. What's your thoughts?
Wow, that was quite a switch, wasn't it? It's this absurdist poem at the beginning, the ridiculousness of this huge cartoon-like whale that he's trying to feed with the sometimes quite stretched rhymes, and then that switch around to really talk about the poetry of what we might be losing here. Uh, yeah, I thought that was quite nice. That kind of, was there an autistic slant to that? I suppose there was, really, the way the poets approached that. Um, a very a very thoughtful way of making a contrast.
Yeah, J.R. said it took him 7 minutes to write that. It felt it was taking me 7 minutes to read it. But, in a good way. And when you read such things, when you read anything, these pictures come in your head and the absurdity, the cartoonish feel you were talking about, Jules. And then as I read more and more of it, there was a lot of humour, but it was making sense in a way, especially when it got to the end, about this thought of life. That's what I'm getting from it, you know, the overthinking, the over description. I just like that we've started again with the poem. And what I liked about it most is the rhyme, because that wouldn't be easy to do. Well, I wouldn't find it easy to do, and I enjoyed it very much.
I think you can get a sort of semi musical sense from it, I'm assuming. GR sometimes feels rhythm when he writes, um, having, spent a large part of his life passionate about music. Uh, and rhythm can really help you get a flow going. Um, I love wee aspects of this. Overall, the imagination impressed me, the creative imagination to develop from. I'm I'm going to ask, like, did it progress like from beginning to end, A B C D E, you know, or did you have a? Yeah, it does feel like that. I'll set something up and see where it goes. Um, yeah, and a Jack Russell, was it a Jack Russell you had before as your home dog? GR's put in text, given that he has maybe bandwidth issues. He's written a lot of such poems, usually involving animals, spelt here animams, which I quite like, rather than human beings. Uh, the iambic pentameter, or Peter Tamter, is all over the lace, right, or the place. What he's saying is the iambic pentameter is all over the place. I'm only saying those words because I memorised them. I don't know what the hell they mean.
I prefer poems when you don't really stick to the structure. Um, and I find your poetry kind of brinks up on nonsense verse and maybe like a smidgen of, well, not a smidgen, but surrealism and magic realism just very naturally, which I love.
I think we could pin that on autistic.
think it's interesting that GR keeps putting in the text this thing about his process is to just put it all down in 7 minutes. Um, and my reading of that is rather that it's already there, it's already formed, and the expressing it down, it is just really translating it out there, and it just goes, it blurts. It's like doing an exam. It's like you are prepared, you're there, you do it. It's a performance. It's done, and it's written, and it's out. I think an awful lot of the time we underestimate the thought processes that are going on when we're able to just let our minds wander, and how we pull all these things together in a very sudden way, and it all sort of feels as though it comes out naturally all in one. But it is a process, maybe.
Yeah, it's almost like divination. But to be less serious, there's that punk thing of just blurting it out. The repetition of just doing things like that. There's the ice cream van. The repetition becomes very easy to access after a while, so you don't have to put in all that time and effort to construct things. It flows out of you quite naturally. And that's quite punk, I think. But initially, it might just sound like all over the place. But gradually, you learn to trust your instincts.
I like what GR says in the text. It's just stuff floating around in my head. There are serious ones too. And I can identify with that in my own writings. The use of humour, but sometimes the use of deep meaning, from my experience anyway. I haven't done it in a while, but I remember doing that in many ways of a way to cope with certain kind of not feeling good or just bad times in life. It's just like it's an outlet, and it helps to not overcome it, but certainly cope with it at the time. But sometimes it's just something that can be done out of a hobby because it feels like there's something bursting inside to be written down at least. If it's not written down, at least done in audio or whatever. Or sometimes people do it in terms of art, in terms of drawing a picture, painting a picture, singing, writing music, all sorts of stuff. Photography even.
I like how when you have humor and seriousness together sometimes, it's it's easier for you to write, but it's easier for the reader to access the more serious element that you're getting at. And I also really like how you get it out in 7 minutes, and then I presume you're not tinkering with it, which I often find ruins it. I wonder if you have the experience of different people reading it and finding different meaning. I love that too when that happens. It's sort of like once you release your 7 minutes and the thoughts come out of your head in such a poetic and entertaining way, it lives now outside of your head differently in a good way for each reader.
Robbie's just put in text there. If he doesn't write it down straight away, it is gone. And that makes me wonder, like, if, when Robbie's working with poetry or other creative writing, uh, does he have it all in his head, like a lot of it, the whole thing? Or is it just happening one after the other, line after line, instantly get it down? Because we can be forgetful, which is another aspect of getting it down, but there's also getting it down which stays in the flow.
It generally comes all at once, and if I don't get it written down straight away, it's gone. And generally, my writing is short and very rarely to a given topic.
So it's not a vast amount of memory you require. It's like, but you're walking around the house saying it to yourself in your head, because I used to do that when I was out walking and I didn't have my phone to sort of dictate to for memory. I would have to remember things in my head in almost a rhythmic, rhyming way, so that when I got home, I was still saying it to myself, which is bizarre when someone stops you in the street and tries to have a conversation.
My writing is typically no longer than about 12 lines.
Would you say it's minimalist, Robbie?
Could be. Some pieces are longer, but it just depends how it comes. Sometimes it rhymes, sometimes it doesn't. It just as it is.
Yeah, I really do enjoy minimalist, non rhyming poetry with lots of space around it on the page, but I enjoy very much this one too. Maybe I just enjoy poetry.
I like what GR said in text, agreeing with Robbie that he has lost volumes of prose to eternity like that by forgetting. It's almost like that thing where you come out of a dream and it's been so amazing you have to remember it, and if you don't do it within about 5 to 10 seconds, you're going to lose it. There are other experiences in life like that, uh, especially if you're high, say, and have a sort of insight and write it down. If you ever get to write it down, you'll probably realize the next day it was utter rubbish. But it's exciting at the time to try and remember these great insights or creative flows.
It's the main reason why I have a problem with people interrupting me, because once I'm interrupted, it's gone.
I usually use the interruption as part of the flow. The next line will come out of that.
Whatever I'm doing, it will be a struggle to start again if I'm interrupted. And if I'm interrupted with writing something down, well, it'll be gone.
Yeah, this is dead interesting to me, this creative space where things work. Creating that space, we need it at times. We can't just have it anywhere, although it's worth trying to figure that out. And that's why I'm so excited about this initiation here of the Poetry Corner. It's like it'll open up a lot of creative conversation.
I've got years of stuff I've written because it was what I thought was going to be my way of being able to communicate with people, get them to understand me as I am, but it never quite worked out.
Did you never find poetry groups locally or online that you could submit to? Because that's what a lot of my friends did. They almost had these ambitions to be a known poet, a recognised poet in their area. But for a lot of them, it didn't quite happen because it was all so low key and small circulation.
For me, it wasn't so much about the writing, it was about people getting to know me as I am and getting over the assumptions people made about me.
That's a really good that's a really good reason to be writing poetry.
The next post is from Tell Me You're Neurodivergent Without Telling Me You're Neurodivergent. It's a public group, and group member Lucy Eleanor has shared the following question. As a neurodivergent person, what was the longest amount of time that you've spent working at one job? What's people's thoughts?
Yeah, I've never gone longer than 2 years in employment, if that's what is meant.
I'm taking from that it means employment, yeah. Because there has been many discussions, many topics, many debates about autistic people, neurodivergent people, and the world of employment, and the sort of status symbol in many societies, including ours. UK, Canada, I believe, as well. It's like to be employed makes you more worthy than if you weren't employed. And this guilt that many people have of not being able to, or it's not about the job itself either. It's a lot of to do with the social aspect, as including interviews, and it's including the social aspect even within the job. The longest I've been in one job, to answer the question, has been a year. But it was always going to be a year because it was a 1 year internship. And that's the only employment that I've had. And I'm talking as a man who is almost 45. I've worked elsewhere, but it's all been voluntary. And in many ways, I feel that's preferred because the lack of, for being in employment and being not in employment, from my experience, it feels like the voluntary is a bit more lighter. And if there's any expectations, it's usually self expectation rather than anybody demanding that I do the job that's required.
I've lasted longer for two, I think for two reasons. One is I absolutely had to work, um, you know, to raise my family. The ones I would say three times I've lasted 7 years, but it was because of the variety. So one was in such a big library that every day there was something new because it was such a big library. You didn't take books out, it was providing reference. And the departments were varied and they moved you around. And then the next long one was in the when the internet was new at a newspaper. And I remember when I left, they gave me one of the designers gave me a framed and matted list of all the different business cards I had. So the company, it's the name of our department changed names, the position changed. Just everything was novel. And then, yeah, as soon as that industry got set, I no longer fit in. I think that the absolute change was what allowed it to happen. Also, that the people understood me.
I think we're back to comfortable environments and spaces again. Maybe not necessarily comfortable, but that work for us.
In the text, GR says He's listed the jobs that he's been in. Builders merchants, 4 years. Labouring, 8 years. Technical and marketing product manager, 6 years. Most jobs, 1 day to 6 months. Had 30 jobs for 47 companies in 35 years. Robbie shared, I have now lasted long on paid employment, perhaps about 2 years. I lasted much longer in voluntary job, 2 years at a well-known charity and 2 years at my friend's shop. It was all about accommodations. And that's the word, isn't it? Accommodations.
Yeah, that's it. And the weird thing is, they were giving accommodations to us because the two types of places I was in, without even knowing, they required a lot of, they attracted a lot of neurodivergent people. And so it was just this way about a library or about digital publishing that uh, I feel it was intuitive, like people used to be in the old days with people who are neurodivergent.
I was just looking at GR's job history there and thinking about experience you've had when you present a CV like that to potential employers. And often they'll err on the side of, they'll judge it as inconsistency when, or lack of commitment, although GRs are long periods. So I see this as quite serious inputs he's put into these positions. I always was concerned when presenting a CV that they would say these things to me, when actually what I was feeling in myself was that I had diversity. And reading GRs, I see diversity, and it just struck me because of this idea of neurodiversity and employment diversity. You know, it's not really valued, is it? Well, it depends.
Yeah, that was accepted in both of the types of places I'm describing. So people in libraries were sort of expected to just go off and study or go off and teach English in a different country, or a lot of women there, so go off and raise children. And then in the digital publishing, go off and get experience at a different company and come back. They encourage that.
Nobody says that his last voluntary job, he only lasted a few weeks because they wouldn't provide accommodations. And he was dismissed because he had an autistic meltdown. So that's the lack of accommodation, fully, without getting into the details. I mean, that's someone's experience.
And is he saying that it wasn't even in his workplace? It happened on the way home? That's remarkable to me.
I basically asked for help from them because I was likely to miss the last bus home, and it was 12 mile away from where I live, and they used that as an excuse to get rid of me. They knew I was autistic, and I'd given permission to contact my therapist if they had any concerns about me, and they didn't even bother.
GR shared in a text, I got to a point where my CV was considered incomprehensible. Created a skills-based CV and then didn't get interviews because I didn't have a list of jobs on my CV. I have a LinkedIn page. And from what I've been hearing from Robbie, reading from Robbie and reading from JR, it all depends on the individual or people that you deal with. Whether it be voluntary or whether it be employment, it's all down to the people that you deal with and their understanding and their way or lack of understanding and how things come about. Yes, there's got to be a kind of reasonable kind of way forward from both sides, but sometimes the other side can be so brutal that it can cause things to go very badly for the autistic person involved.
I'm sure they must have got a lot of different answers to this question in their group, because nothing's really predictable about neurodivergence in the workplace.
But I was wondering about what the average would have been. I was guessing it would have been 2 years, but I don't really have any basis for that.
I have a rather different slant on it because I felt fairly in one place for a very long time. Self-employment, having a kind of fluid change through that. Really small business, micro business now. And that means that you get the option of moulding what you do a bit about your identity and making it work for you. Where this is all about the clash between what's okay for a human, an individual human, and diverse people are extreme examples of humanity in lots of cases, more sensitive in different situations. So the canary in the coal mine. And the modern workplace is not a nice place to be if you're a human being. The canary in the coal mines, the neurodivergent people are showing how awful some of the environments are, both socially and actually physically. Unless you're in a lot more control of how you do your work and how you are able to contribute, I don't really see working in many workspaces is a good idea for a neurodivergent person. I think they need to find a healthier way of living a life.
Wouldn't it be that once you get to an interview, you have to be there because you want it? And I've always tried to convince myself in that situation that find out what this person speaking to me wants and make them want me more than, say, anybody else. But I don't really even consider that. I just have to get into this relationship of, I want to work for you. I want to now make you want me to work for you. And that directness can often transcend a lot of paperwork. But it's very rare you get in a situation where you're actually there because you want it that much. You're often forced into the situation because it's all that may be available.
Well, what I'm doing now, I'm passing 7 years and it is working for myself in yet another industry where neurodivergence is common. And I think it'll last a long time because I am working for myself and kind of in a way in a leadership position too, because I'm a head of an association. it ends up working for me, and I enjoy it because there is that novel thing. It almost makes it sound like I have ADHD too, but I don't. But projects begin and end and begin and end, and the experience is good that way for me.
Just going to pick up on something GR put in the text there, because he responded to me thinking, okay, I'll read it in sequence. He said, funnily enough, a local disability service just put his name forward to take part in a project to make job centres more autism friendly. Now, I was next on and I put as an employer, but I was attaching that to what Jules was saying about a different take on employment, the subject, because I know that Jules may have had experience on the other side as an employer rather than someone seeking employment. And GR's then responded to me saying no to job seekers, I think. But I was going to ask that question, GR, about are they in any sense offering you a job or just wanting you to volunteer to assist them in some sense? We may have to wait for text there as a response if GR's having vocal issues. So the response in text when GR is not paid, he thinks, still not be contacted about it, but we'll let that one roll.
I think I have a lot in common with what Teresa expressed. And what she expressed that I heard was a portfolio career, moving from one field to another that all fit her best interest as a neurodivergent person, the kind of things that go with us, skill-based stuff. But also because it's project-based, it was something that could continue to be rolling on, having a different effect each time. So, and I get that very much as well, because running any kind of business is constantly reshaping things. These are very fortunate situations that we have experienced. Prior to the first business that took off, looking for jobs as a job seeker, as a neurodivergent weirdo, I couldn't see myself fitting in any way, shape or form. I felt as though I had to go down the route of creating something and doing something odd and weird to get into this. And I don't know whether you felt that as well, Teresa, that was the option that you looked for, that was open to you, that would send you off in a good place.
Well, the first job that I got, I had a similar job while I was in university, this extremely independent job where I would just go to this big, there were many, many libraries in the university, but I had one where I would go between classes at my own time, pick up out of this wire basket the requests, go research the thing, come back, put it in the other basket to be sent out to whatever place. This is all before the internet. And then I was just walking down the street at university and I saw a girl that was my best friend in grade 7. and she just said, oh, they're looking for people at the reference library. This was when you had to go in person. So I did agonize over like what to wear, but basically I just wore something I usually wore. Went, said to the receptionist in HR, here's my application. And she said, oh, just sit and wait. And then a woman came out with the coincidental surname Carnegie. if you get that, you get that about libraries. Like she wasn't a Carnegie, but you know. And then I got a job. Uh, they were looking for people like me, completely shy, completely awkward, completely boringly dressed, just some studious, shy person. Oh, and then when the internet started, nobody understood how news would be organized on the internet, and they wanted people with library backgrounds. So it went from there.
The next post is from the autistic teacher. Public figure, autistic and proud, sharing insight and understanding to help the autistic community based in the UK. And I've shared a quote. I refuse to let anyone persuade me that I'm crazy, oversensitive, or insecure for responding normally to their hurtful actions. And she continues, many of us didn't understand ourselves. I know who I am now. I'm autistic. I refuse to let anyone persuade me that I'm crazy, oversensitive, or insecure for responding normally to their hurtful actions. What's people's thoughts on that?
That is hard what that person is describing, but they sound strong. I'm kind of brave about it. And my experience is that the person who didn't think I was crazy was diagnosed when I was 6 or 7 as schizophrenic. And then the rest of the family just kept their eye on me because they probably thought I was crazy. And I didn't think either one of us were crazy.
When I was looking through this post and it was talking about the word crazy, it reminded me of how I felt in school when I was becoming, really insecure and really unsure what was going on because I was struggling with secondary school. My mum and dad, well, particularly my dad, from what I remember, was thinking, is it just part of puberty and I was just going through a hard time because of that time of life? But to me, I was actually fearing that I was going crazy because I felt so different. I felt that I overthought things. I felt that I was more immature than I should be at the age that I was. As ridiculous as it sounds now, all before the diagnosis came, which came through a crisis. So those words kind of remind me of that period in my life. And just to say that I'm kind of not fully confident, but I'm a very confident man that I am not crazy. I'm autistic and I'm, fairly satisfied in that. And if anybody tried to make me feel that I was that way or inferior or whatever, then, I could stand up to them and say, hey, you don't you dare talk to me like that. So I can connect with what the post is saying to a degree.
I'm a wee bit confused by the word normally in that sentence. I do understand what's intended, but it's a strange word in there.
Yeah, I think the sentiment there is spot on though, isn't it? Because you get accused of having abnormal reactions, of being oversensitive, or being insecure, or being irrational, crazy. So they're the accusations. So that's what the language has to be sort of jigsawed together as. So normally is within people's expectations of humanity. You know, it's not us. We are our reactions, the way we respond, is a perfectly reasonable, acceptable level. Don't make it look outside to undermine us. Don't don't criticise it for being excessive. It's not excessive. It's a reasonable level. It's a reasonable reaction.
The next post is from Chelsea Luca, autistic ADHD psychologist and author. Neurodivergent affirming support for therapists and their communities. Low demand membership at the centre with programmes and training focused on burnout, systems, and sustainable practice. And they've shared a post called Kids Notice When Systems Don't Fit Too. Parents and educators often see this first in kids. The child who's fine until they're not. The student who's capable but exhausted. The nervous system that's constantly adapting. Adults aren't different. We are just expected to push through longer. A life built just for you matters right across a lifespan. You deserve a life and a practice that fits you too. Most people's thoughts.
I'm wondering if this is a program because of the fact that a life built just for you is in capitalization there, as if it's a statement or a title for something.
Or like a mission statement.
Yeah, I'm doing the spider fingers at my screen, just, running my fingers along those words because they're confusing me.
Are we being sold to?
Yeah, by triggering emotions.
So, see that line, you deserve a life and a practice in brackets. Right, I'm not negative about this, I'm just confused as to the content.
They appear to be offering a service, but I think the words that stuck out to me was basically is, even though it sounds patronising, the sort of thing, because you deserve a life too, you deserve this, of course I do. I mean, everybody does, but I just feel that this sort of language is quite helpful for people that aren't self-doubt, whether they need to purchase or to get involved with this particular thing that's selling is up for debate. But I think the words seemed important, although thinking about it, while reading and actually kind of discussing, maybe a little confusing.
Still, I do think that it's important to know that kids notice when systems don't fit too. I think that's a fine message.
Yeah, they're selling a program, but just because we start looking for what somebody's selling doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't got a good message in there too.
The next post is from Stepping Stones. We're a mental health service. We're a registered charity based in Western Bartonshire, Scotland, and we provide a range of support services for people who experience common mental health problems based in the UK. And they're promoting Neurodiversity Celebration event. Please kindly join us for tea, treats, bingo, raffle prize, and a wonderful company as we mark Neurodiversity Celebration Week 2026. Friday the 20th of March, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m, Benview Resource Centre, Main Hall, 50 Strathleven Place, Dumbarton. And it's got the contacts for people who, it's got contact details if you want to go along. And I just found this interesting because it's local to me. But I know it's a bit different, but you get these things about, the Autism Awareness Month, and you get these new, well, it's different words, isn't it? Awareness. And then this is the first time I've heard of Neurodiversity Celebration Week. Has anybody else heard of that?
No, but I like the idea of this as a model for people getting together, having any kind of excuse, call it a week, a month, a day, or whatever, um, and just in this really small way, supporting each other, making contacts with each other. It looks like it could be something that people who are listening in all different communities in different places could copy and do for themselves.
Is there any issue with it being associated with mental illness or not?
Well, it just depends how it's approached, but people who are neurodiverse do have mental health issues like everybody else, and maybe even more because the way they've been treated. I mean, I have depression, and I think that is because of through the way society makes you feel, for certain kind of, you know, because of who you are, and you do things differently, so it's strange. So there's this sort of, it kind of created this depression when I was in my teenage years that I can handle now. But the weird thing about where this is based is I used to be involved in the mental health forum there. So it's just all coming back home. I left many years ago now, 15 years ago actually, nearly. So the mental health thing, it does sort of create debate, but I think it's not totally wrong. It's just when people call it a disorder in terms of being neurodiverse. Although I don't think they call that a disorder anyway if you're using that language. But then it creates all these conversations and any misunderstandings can be discussed in events just like that. Like this, like special speakers coming along talking about their experience, their lived experience, and breaking down stereotypes, that sort of thing.
I think it's an interesting question though, because for a long time people have been trying to disassociate autism and ADHD from mental health problems that have treatments, and make them much more understood as a part of a normal range, a diversity. But there is also the glaring figures that show that if you haven't fitted a certain model for the whole of your life, you're more likely to have developed some kind of issue with your mental health that has a more traditional label. So higher levels of depression, higher levels of suicide, higher levels of social exclusion, and actually a shorter life. It's almost as though, yes, we've come all the way around the circle now, and we have to associate being autistic with mental health issues on the basis that ignoring that we are more vulnerable, it doesn't help our cause. We actually now have to kind of go through the whole thing again, do a double twist, and say, yeah, there is an association here, and the association is not for the reasons you thought they were.
Well, it does seem positive, like it's a celebration. And if the topics are on topic, one of the things about this whole thing is yes, we do have resulting burnout, resulting depression, resulting risk of suicide, but funding is also going into these places, but they're hopefully becoming more advanced, and this place seems to be celebrating neurodiversity with the funding they have, even though it's a mental health place, I suppose.
I like to think that mental health is general to everyone. It's like physical health. You can be hyperactive about it, or you could neglect it to a certain extent, but we all are concerned with mental health. I'm not saying that everyone has mental health issues or problems. I do think we all have mental health issues, but when it becomes problematic, integrating your mental health with society, then that should be a very open and inclusive space. It often isn't. I think there's a tendency to, at core, want to normalise things through these groups and institutions. And until the evidence convinces me otherwise, I will guardedly take that approach.
This is an odd one for me because I I want to project an image of somebody who, because they had the best opportunities, their autism hasn't manifested as a mental illness problem. That being in a fortunate situation for an autistic person works out just fine. And it's also how I sort of suck up the other people around me who are autistic that are part of my family and my wider circle, and how they view the way they've lived their lives. And it's with some difficulties, but on balance just fine. And so for me, I think I want to represent to say that you don't have to end up with lots of other labels attached to you. You can have a mental health outlet that I would view as authentic and healthy, and be autistic and be ADHD. There's all sorts of healthy versions of that kind of person. But we do have to recognise that people struggle, and the position they're put into makes them struggle.
Robbie shared in the text, my anxiety and depression is a result of living in a society designed by and for neurotypical people. And when I had support from my father, I rarely had autistic meltdowns and rarely suffered anxiety and depression. I've never suffered with depression. When my father passed away, I felt I was at risk of becoming homeless. I mean, all those things will cause anxiety and mental health issues, of course it would.
There are words that Robbie brings up often, like accommodation and validation as well. You know, that kind of integration and inclusiveness in society is sorely lacking at times, and that additionally puts the pressure on. And I take on board what Jules was saying at the end of what he was saying about when people's mental health or mental illness issues are a struggle, then, you know, support is required.
I think I advocate for support for both neurodivergence and mental health. And I do recognize that we could have a reactionary depression or a burnout or have both mental illness and neurodiversion. But, and if the funding goes there and people are doing good things, I'm okay. My diagnosis came from CAMH. I forget what it stands for. Canadian. It's like a mental health, big hospital that does research, and it was in the neurodiversity department. So also, I'm up close and personal with mental health institutions because I've been in them. My father's been in them. I even worked at one for a summer job 1 year. If things are moving in the right direction, I'm cool.
Well, thanks everyone. That was another great discussion tonight. And thanks for everyone who has shared those posts. And thanks to Gia for sharing that poem that we started the podcast with. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 22nd of February, which is part of the Spectrum Voices conversation, 5:55 to 7 p.m. every Sunday. Look forward to next week. Good night.